Next question, are there any fully supported people in the body, and how is their support arranged?
Well, partially answered already. Their support's never arranged. There's no guarantees that anybody would automatically have anything. Mm-hmm. And yet, there have been probably at least, close to a dozen brothers that because of the life that they've led in Christ, the way they've labored hard amongst the people of God unselfishly, that have received gratitude from those that have been benefited spiritually in their families, their homes, their children, their lives on the job, and so on. And as far as, quote, full support, there really isn't anybody in the church here that is free to assume that any given week that's automatically going to happen. I don't know of anybody that isn't also kind of doing some kind of tent making or prepared to, whatever, is always watching his circumstance so that as God leads other people to make sure that he doesn't need to wait on tables, he can be devoted to prayer and service with the Word. If God provides that avenue for him on a consistent basis by motivating a number of people to help, organically speaking, that's great, and that is God's way, that there would be people free to be devoted to prayer and service with the Word and not have to wait on tables. But as far as being on salary or not have to be in touch day by day, week by week, and year by year with the Spirit of God and watching the direction of God and trusting God for anything that God might provide through other people, there isn't anybody in that category that anything's been arranged for. It has been a great benefit that brothers' needs have been met in terms of help with automobiles or travel expenses, different places, or even food for their table, freedom to take 3 weeks off of a job without pay so they can travel to another place and do some work for God in another country or whatever. That kind of giving and freedom has definitely been an earmark of God's working in generosity through His people. If there were 10,000 people in the church here, I would have to think that He would raise more and more people up organically, that He would lift up in order that they wouldn't need to wait on tables anymore. That's God's call, though. It's totally up to God how many people are able to not have to wait on tables, at least from time to time. And even the mighty Apostle Paul made tents from time to time. You can see that happening. There was an ebb and flow to the thing in his personal life. That was fine. He worked night and day to supply for his own needs, he told the Thessalonians. That there's a time and a place for that, for spiritual reasons, that God would order something like that to happen. And that's okay. Who cares? It's not a profession, doctor, lawyer, Indian chief, minister, pastor, holy man, medicine man. If you're hired to be a spokesman for God, you're living in the wrong covenant. It's the wrong thing. If you're living the life of God and God frees you to be able to do more of this and less of that, that's His business, and that's super.
How do you take care of the poor among you?
Well, we have people that are making exorbitant wages, not many, but we have people that are making very good wages from the world standpoint, and others because of education or particular talents or communication skills in their upbringing or physical problems or whatever are making very little, so on. We have a vast array of, from PhDs all the way down to not even high school graduates, and thinking about, a lot of people's lives, and yet if you were to go in their homes, you wouldn't find a discrepancy really in the way one family lives versus another to any great extent. At least if there is this month, it might be reversed next month. If you see this person driving this car that's kind of beat up this month, they might be driving a brand new car next month. It happens all the time. It happens constantly that housing and possessions and all of that stuff is changing hands to however God can use it best. If we don't count our possessions as our own, if that's the nature of Christian living, then it makes a lot of sense that there would be no needy among us. If we're really relationship oriented, we're going to know when there's problems, and the grocery needs are going to be met, and the transportation needs are going to be met, and God's going to provide in such a way that it's not socialism in the sense that there's some doctrine that everybody has to live exactly the same. And I can think of one case where long before a family ever really met God in His fullness, because of the nature of their business and so on, they had huge amount of wages and vast amount of money and a mansion and vast amount of property and so on and so forth. But man, if you were to explore their lives, and you have, you'd find that even in that case, with this huge possession, which they would walk out of and live in a 2-bedroom apartment tomorrow if they felt like that was God's will for them, because they don't care about it. The generosity and the ability to not care about those things for themselves is very evident. That's why David could live in the kind of house that he did, the palace that he lived in, and it just wasn't an issue because his heart wasn't attached to it. His heart was in love with God. So, needs are constantly met, and there isn't any, it's not socialism in the sense that everybody has to have exactly the same kind of housing arrangement. That's craziness, and that's not really the way it is at all. But on the other hand, it's safe to say there are no needy persons among us, in the sense that nobody is going to go without meals and without clothing, without people caring for their situation, helping them find work and helping train them to be able to find work if necessary, and all that kind of thing happens day in and day out, and it's out of relationship. There's no benevolence program. There's no a person in charge of anything like that. It's just people loving each other, and that'll meet the needs. It has for years, and will continue to.
Yeah, and just another way in which it's not like socialism is that there's not really any central committee, so to speak, making sure that there's no needy among us. I mean, probably the most typical way, if a person has some needs, that those would be met is they wake up one morning and there's an envelope under their door and there's grocery money or there's their rent payment or whatever it might be. It's at that level. It's at the organic, brother to sister type of relationship. So that's the most typical way, I think.
Yeah.